Good morning to the viewers of NTV, and we've been focusing on our advocacy work on digital innovation and financial inclusion. A lot has been done. We recently concluded the third season of the 40 Days for the Fintechs initiative at an event that was graced by the Minister of ICT, Honorable Joyce Nabasa Sebugwao. But we are always doing our work in ensuring we focus on enabling financial inclusion by helping players in the space to meet the needs of low-income users, individuals, merchants, and the DFSPs themselves. I mean digital financial service providers themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've mentioned low income and you've talked about financial inclusion. So from you, I want to find out what are the numbers. When we talk about financial inclusion, how do they reflect on urban areas and how do they reflect on rural areas?
Well, the journey to achieving full financial inclusion, for example, is still a very long one for us as an economy of Uganda and as the continent of Africa. For instance, a World Bank report states that in Uganda alone, women are about 50.76%, and the men are the least percentage. But starting from a women perspective, the women are underrepresented among those who are financially included, even in the urban areas. So it is even worse in villages where men still think women use their phones to cheat, so they shouldn't have phones, where men think a woman should be in the garden and do all that kind of stuff. The numbers are still poor, but we've had good progress. I mean, looking back and saying, can we look at 14 years ago for Uganda's inclusion spectrum and looking at today and saying we have about 23 million transaction accounts, mobile and bank. And then we had about 3 or 4 million by then in 2008 and 9. Means we've moved a lot, and we can only get better. But of course, when we want to ensure that we meet the needs of low-income users, especially in regard to financial inclusion, there's quite a few aspects that we need to focus on, and I think I would be very happy to speak about them today.
Okay, all right. You talk about financial inclusion, and you've mentioned different sectors. It all comes down to policy making. So for you, what are the policy making gaps that you have realized that have brought about the difference in financial inclusion in urban and rural areas?
Well, it will come down to policy making, yes, at the end of the day. That's in the evening. But not every single moment of what we have to do, because inclusion has to do with a lot of things. Has to do with financial literacy, digital literacy in this age and time, has to do with ensuring that we create rails and rules that are enabling for everyone that is a participant in the space. I mean, if you're talking about a digital financial service provider, a fintech, regulation, enabling regulation is a rail itself that helps everyone actually easily on board and innovate for everyone. I don't know, we are on Take Note today, so I request that you allow me read. Okay. This is a critical topic that we need to talk about, and you allow me read because I think some of these things should be talked about in the right context without even skipping a word. So the Level 1 project created a guide in 2019, and the guide is speaking about experience of how different players in the space, donors, DFSPs, mobile network operators, the banks, and all agencies around and government, what they think should be done in making sure we innovate and also make sure we include everyone. So there are about 5 aspects. One is accessibility, and when you talk about accessibility, we are specifically talking about making sure that our users have access to acquire transactional accounts and can use them. For instance, it's easy for people to go and open up a bank account sometimes when they have need for that day, but are they using it? Yeah, so many times they're open. People have mobile SIM cards and they have mobile money accounts, but they don't use them to transact. Maybe someone receives some payment, they withdraw and leave the card because we are not doing so much to help them use them even more for utilities and many other payments or bills, or even keeping their own money. The other bit is reliability. It is important that we make sure that users' information and money is secure and safe when it is in any space, especially in digital financial services space. Why we also need to ensure that the tools we are creating deter acts like supporting terrorism and money laundering. Why? Because that becomes a threat for growth of the economy. Yeah. The other bit is ensuring that these solutions that we are creating and the approaches we're creating are valuable. Valuable in a sense that you don't want to put money somewhere. You don't want to have your 50,000 shillings put in a place where it looks like it is 45,000 shillings, which happens a lot within our space. Yes, we have innovated a lot, but the costs of what we are innovating are still very high. So someone is sending 50,000, they need a 2,000 shillings buys salt for a whole half year. So you're taking it away from them. So that takes away the value. And that doesn't mean affordability, because the other bit I want to talk about is affordability. Yes, we are creating solutions. We are telling people use mobile money, use banking solutions, use SACCOs, use microfinance institutions and all that kind of stuff. But are the solutions we are creating affordable and acceptable in terms of the rates and costs that people have to pay? If they are not affordable for them, then it means someone is going to keep their money and the ants will eat it for some reason. And the last bit is ensuring that they are profitable. And someone will say, profitable for who? They are players, digital financial service providers, they are fintechs, they are governments and all that, and they're investing in rails, in infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. And they want to make sure that in the end, if I innovate, I have a fintech, I have money to buy meat and milk and food at home. So they need to be profitable so that we can sustain these innovations. So when that is done, then we are speaking about making sure that we meet the needs of low-income users that many sometimes prefer to call poor. So when we have that, then that's when we come to regulation at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So then, Innocent, how does IT able to bridge the gap that we're talking about?
Well, IT or ICTs have already enabled that, and they've already shown the capability of doing that. I mean, the examples that are in the space, things like the mobile money innovation, the mobile banking innovation, and digital financial services in general are a whole testament of how technology can be used to revolutionize how things are done, especially things to do with money. I mean, it is not news to anyone, especially to you and to the viewers of NTV, that technology has transformed everything. I mean, you've seen the memes of someone carrying a TV, radio, speaker, and all that, and they're telling you they're all in one in your pocket right now. But then importantly, I don't know who will carry the bank one of these days. I don't know who will, but someone should carry one of the biggest banks in Uganda. Maybe they carry the central bank, and also say, hey, the central bank is also in the phone. Why? Because banking itself is also on the mobile phone, so it's in a handset. The phone I'm holding can help me transact with anyone anywhere in the world. So that means that when we have that done and being enabled by technology, that means we are having a tested rail that we can only use to multiply its effect.
So what are some of the companies on the market that are actually enabling this multiplier effect?
Well, should I say companies? For example, I'm not sure if I can remember the 40 fintechs that actually there were 47 that participated in the recent 40 Days for the Fintechs initiative. And I wouldn't want to even mention just one of them for not wanting to miss out any of them. But today, for instance, the fintech ecosystem is hosting at least 76 registered fintechs and about 14 that have been licensed by the central bank as payment managers or remittances and whatever it may be. The banks are about 25 or 26, the microfinance institutions, the SACCOs, there are very many e-SACCOs, and there is also a growing number of e-lenders that are a bit fraudulent for some reason. We'll get to that sometime. And then we have the telecom operators. We have 3 that are still operating, and they're all offering mobile wallets. So I mean, to mention but a few, those that belong to those sectors are all players that are all doing a very important role in making sure we achieve financial inclusion. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And finally, with what you had mentioned earlier, how then do we actually move forward in ensuring that there is a stable continuous financial inclusion, not just focusing on urban, but also correcting it in the rural areas?
Well, I'm so glad that you asked that question and saying finally. Why? Because I from the start I wanted to speak about the reality that we have come to a place where now we need to collaborate on making and creating the right rails for including everyone. So from a high people perspective and from our partners, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Level 1 Project, we've been speaking to governments around the continent and around the world about how to create affordable, instant and inclusive payment systems. These are also supposed to be interoperable, that allow every player, the banks, the MNOs, the fintechs, the circles, to integrate and have an access point. So the thing is, we are at a point where we are supposed to have players like the Private Sector Foundation coming in here to become conveners of some sort for conversations of building a private sector-led payment switch, for example, and having our regulators like the Bank of Uganda, the Ministry of ICT, and government in general come in to support and be the overseers of such an initiative. Why? In the end, this is going to help quicken innovation and then also cut down the costs for innovation, which will in the end help cut down the cost of the user of the digital financial services that will end up getting included. And in the end, we shall be celebrating having created an economy that includes and benefits everyone.
All right, asante sana, Innocent Kawaya for high people, and we're excited about things. Thank you so much for the 40 days of 40 fintechs. It was a nice one to follow up on, and you can participate actively. Find them on social media and also on their website for more details. Well, that brings us to the end of our tech note in terms of financial inclusion for all, both in urban and rural. When we return, tourism. How can we actually also match that into the discussion that we have had? Do stay with us.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
From your docks to the rest of the world, speak to us for all your international trade finance needs. Mitigate risk and improve liquidity